Okay, in this video I will finish setting up my guitar. Now that I've sort of adjusted the neck, I've already tuned it up, so that is done. And the first thing I'm going to do is check the truss rod tension and the relief on the strings. So I do have an Allen key, and then I have a whole set of feeler gauges, and it depends on the type of guitar you have. And if you look at the Fender Custom Shop website, it'll tell you different reliefs for different neck radiuses. But as long as you have a good selection like this one, you probably have a feeler gauge that'll work for you. The one I want is actually a 0.01 or a 0.25 millimeter, but I'm going to use the 0.011, which is a 0.28 millimeter, as the feeler gauge of choice based on my neck radius. So the capo, you can see, is on the first fret, and I'm going to hold the string down on the final fret closest to the pickups, and I'm going to check the string height at about the 8th fret. Somewhere between the 7th and 9th fret is fine. And like I said, I'm looking for that 0.011 for the string relief. Now, one point, you don't want it laying on its back or having weight on the neck when you're doing this, so it's supposed to be in sort of the playing position. So like I said, the capo's still on the first fret, holding down at the final fret with my thumb, count off to about the 8th fret, and then check the relief on the strings. So using the larger feeler gauges first, it's definitely the 0.016 or 0.4 millimeter is too big. It's dragging the string with it when I try to put it under there. But the 0.014 or 0.35 millimeter is actually thin enough that it can slot between the string and the fret without actually dragging across the string. So the relief is probably a little bit too high. I do need to make a few small adjustments on this. So the neck has too much curve in that way, so I want to bring the center of the neck up. So right now it's too concave, and I want to make it a little more convex. So I'll slot the Allen key into the truss rod, and I'm going to turn it clockwise. So if it's too concave, you want to bring the action higher. You turn it clockwise, tightening the truss rod. If it was the other way around and it was too close to the fretboard, which is too convex, you would turn it counterclockwise, and that would increase the relief. So once I've made that adjustment, I'll adjust less than a quarter turn at a time, about an eighth of a turn. I will redo the tuning. I'll let the guitar sit for about 15 minutes, and then I'll go test it again. So I do that adjustment 3 times in total until I get it right where I want to be. The next thing I'm going to do is check the string height. I'm going to use this D'Addario string action gauge that I picked up at Long and McQuaid for, I think it was 12 bucks Canadian or something. And it'll tell you a whole bunch of heights and give you some examples of where you should be at and some conversions between inches and millimeters. So pretty good little tool for less than 15 bucks. So it's made out of metal, and it'll last obviously quite a while. So obviously it's giving you some options here. So string height at the 12th fret for an electric guitar, 0.078 of an inch at the low E, and at the high E, 0.063 of an inch is what they're recommending. I actually use the Fender Custom Shot numbers again and the location for where they're telling you to measure the strings for this, and I'm using 4/64 of an inch on both the low E and the high E string as my target. So this gauge, like I said, recommends you measure at the 12th fret, but I also got the recommendation to measure where the body and the neck sort of join together. I didn't actually notice a difference in the string height at either location anyway, so I guess it doesn't really matter in my case. This one is at about 0.04 of an inch. If I flip this around, go to millimeters, it's at about 1.75 millimeters. A little hard to see with the camera, hard to get in tight with good focus, but about 1.75 millimeters. and that's the low E string. So if you flip this little gauge over, it's recommending 1.98 millimeters. So my action is slightly lower for the low E string, which is perfectly fine because I actually like a lower action. And then for high E, this one's a little bit higher. It's a little closer to that 2.25 or 2 millimeter mark. And that's for the high E string. Turning the gauge out of metric, it's at about the 0.06, 0.07 of an inch range for the high E, which is admittedly a little higher than I would want it, but it turns out I can't actually lower the action any lower than it is, and I'll get to that in a second. So the action's a little lower on the low E and a little higher on the high E, but I actually don't mind where the action's set up right now. So I'll talk about the action a little bit later, but like I said, I'm just going to leave it. For right now, I'm going to adjust the intonation. In order to adjust the intonation, it is best to have a tuner, unless you've got perfect pitch ears. So the first thing I'm going to do is get the high E into tune in the open position. And then once it's in tune in the open position, I'll depress the string at the 12th fret and then play it and see if it's still an E. So obviously this is a little bit flat when it's played at the 12th fret. So what that means is I need to move the saddle closer to the pickup. So it needs to go forward, and that'll make it sharper. So a little demonstration here. That needs to go in that direction. So moving these saddles, like I said, up towards the pickup will make it slightly sharper. If you move them back, it'll make it flatter. It'll make that note flatter. So I just turned it counterclockwise, and that should actually bring it right into the correct zone for pitch. And one thing to keep in mind, every time you move the saddle, you will have to retune the string. So I'll get the open E back to where it needs to be, and then I'll play it at the 12th fret. And that's good enough. I'll run with that. And just as another example, I'll do the A string. Again, get it into tune at the open A, then play at the 12th fret, and it's good to go. I'll live with that. And then obviously you're going to want to go through all the strings. Every guitar is a little bit different for string height adjustment. Most of these Fenders have a little Allen key adjustment. So you can see this high E actually touches the bridge screw, so I can't lower the action on that string. So it's kind of an annoyance, and this is probably a result of this aftermarket nut that the previous owner of this thing put on, or maybe this neck isn't just great for it. So it may be that the nut isn't sitting on there properly, and it's actually affected how the guitar plays a little bit. It's not major, and in fact, this guitar plays better and sounds better than it probably should. So I'm just going to leave it as is for the time being, and maybe I'll come back and adjust that nut after. But just to wrap this up, the steps I took here: adjust the truss rod, then check your string height, then adjust your intonation, and your guitar should be good to go. Anyway, thanks for watching my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.